Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us. I am Fred Schonberg. I am the founder of Venture Fuel. I'm so excited to have all of you here today and our amazing panelists. We're going to talk about the future of fandom. This is part of Venture Fuel's What's Next Now series, where we try and get industry experts, visionaries in their field to talk about what's in the future, what they're worried about, what they're excited about, and how they're keeping their businesses at the forefront of what is changing and occurring. And I can't think of any industry more interesting in this space than sports because of all of our passions for it. The fact it's in person, but it's also broadcast. There's a lot of moving pieces in the sports world, and we have sort of the who's who gathered today. What we do when we do these events is we start off with a little bit of background on why what's next matters, for lack of more description. So I'm going to share my screen here. Just give me 1 second as we pull this up. And Shira, please let me know if this is broadcasting okay. So our series is called What's Next Now. And the reason behind that is we believe that in the past, people have thought about the sort of McKinsey 3 horizons of innovation, this idea that you have an existing market, an emerging market, and a future market, right? Now, new, next. Things are changing so quickly. Technology is advancing so fast. We believe that's down to 1 horizon. And that horizon is next is now. And that is the way we think. That is the way we help our clients. As business people, you're often very focused on your core, as you should be. That's what pays the bills. That's what grows in the immediate. But what's happening around you in the adjacent markets, and then even outside of that, is really where the disruption is happening. And that's what we do at Venture Fuel. Is we help industry-leading companies from Fortune 500s, everything in from food to streaming video, help them find those sort of disruptors, to partner with them, to collaborate, to stay in front of the future. Why we do this, working with startups, it's a faster timeline. To use a sports reference, we always joke it's like starting on third base. They've already spent the time developing the tech, proving product market fit. And so you have the opportunity to kind of start there with them, but they need your resources and they want to work with you. So there's a real opportunity there for startup and large company to come together. Startups are always closer to the consumer, right? That's why they started it. There's usually one-to-one relationships. So there's some advantages there as well. Today, this is all going to be about our panelists. But the way I like to get everyone excited about this, my team, some of whom you saw in the introductions, spends all day talking to our global innovation network, over 500 university labs, venture capitalists, seed investors all around the world. We're always looking for what's next. So I thought we'd share a couple startups in the sports world in particular that have us excited. And I'm going to go very quickly. We can share this with you post-event, but just some ideas to get you all started. So Rare. This is sort of fantasy sports meets blockchain. They've raised $700 million, so not a little startup. But the idea is this idea of fantasy sports globally, where you can trade official collectibles. This gets into the crypto world and NFTs, which I think will come up a lot today. But this idea of using technology to share that fandom and fan excitement. Galaxy, which is sort of the creator galaxy, which together is where the name came from. Very new, just launched in 2020. Again, the sort of blockchain-based digital token fan experience. So if anyone's familiar with Cameo, this is a similar idea, but for the players. So a way for them to engage one-to-one with their fan base, which obviously is very interesting, both to the fan and the player as a new revenue stream. Excuse me, I went the wrong way. This is one that we actually introduced 2.5, 3 years ago at CES and also at South by Southwest before they had launched. It's called the Fan Controlled Football League. They just announced they're going to do their second season. This to me signals a lot of the changes in sports, that the fans are actually the ones calling the shots. The fans select the logos of the team, the colors of the jersey, who the head coaches are, right? They actually can influence the play call. They have big names involved in this. Joe Montana, Marshawn Lynch, and Johnny Manziel, Heisman Trophy winner, is actually one of the players, right? So fans are on mobile, they're on Twitch, they're talking to each other. There's a community here, but they're actually in on the action. Betting is something that I think will come up today as well. Simple Bet is really interesting in that they're using machine learning plus real-time technology to create micro betting opportunities. Is X player going to make, complete the next pass? How many yards is Aaron Rodgers going to throw on the next pass, right? This is B2B enterprise software. It's happening in the back end. They raised $50 million and just signed a multi-year deal with DraftKings to allow this sort of micro betting. But anybody that's been to a baseball game, I always remember we used to sit and bet a beer on if the rosin bag would be left on the pitcher's mound at the end. This is the next generation of that. This is actually on your mobile device while you're at the game. Computer vision to power both fan engagement, but also new revenue streams for the teams. This is Edison N.AI, I believe is how they're pronouncing it. But the idea here is that as a team, you release your highlights from the game. What if those highlights were instantly shoppable? They delivered opportunity to buy merchandise, sell new tickets, or have contextual advertising. This is using machine learning to recognize which player, what the context is, to create those opportunities, to both help the fan go deeper, but also provide new opportunities. And the last one, and then we'll get to the panels, which is what you guys are here for. This is a little different. This is actually Karari is an idea of technology coming out of NTT at the Olympics this year. And basically the idea is that they streamed ultra realistic communication technology. So holograms projected of the Olympics live in another venue. They did this with ping pong. They did it with badminton. The idea in the future, right, is that you could actually have Wrigley Field sitting on your coffee table and watch the action live from above, turn it around, look at it however you want. That sounds very futuristic and kind of crazy. There's several startups on the bottom of the screen that are working on this, some at different points of the process. But as 5G and things like that come along, it is something really interesting to think about of, are sports going to be in stadium? Are we going to bring the stadium experience elsewhere? So that's my introduction. We're going to now get to the main show. Of course, if anyone here is interested in learning more about Venture Fuel or how we can help your organization stay in front of what's next, you can email me anytime or anybody that is involved. So Shira, I will now take it to the main event. All right. Hello, everybody. So we have a just insane panel here. I think I did this just to talk to the three of you and get your insights. Your bios are amazing. We've got them in the notes everywhere, so I won't spend too much time on it. I thought maybe if you each could just give a blurb on who you are and what you do at your organization to level set for anybody that hasn't gotten to read it yet. So Lauren, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Lauren Fritz, Vice President of Marketing for the Chicago Cubs. When they don't know where to put it, they put it in marketing. So we do a little bit of everything. Some of the typical stuff you'd expect in terms of fan engagement and content and creative and, things related to the Cubs and Wrigley Field archive. So a little bit of everything.
I love it. And Rob.
Hi, I'm Rob Schneider. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm the Chief Strategy, Content, and Development Officer at Learfield. For those that may not be familiar with Learfield, we're the largest rights holder in college athletics, working with over 180 universities, as well as providing ticketing, licensing, content management solutions, and the like. So really the closest thing there is to a league from a revenue and monetization perspective in college athletics. And at Learfield, I look after overall strategy, all of our corporate development investments, as well as managing really our full stack fan engagement platform, from data management and analytics to digital marketing to content creation, and really just trying to understand how do we expand the fan experience outside of the stadium, as well as how do we enhance the experience in the stadium as well.
I love it. And Brandon, what about you?
Hey everybody, Dr. Brandon Brown. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a clinical associate professor at NYU and the Tisch Institute for Global Sport. I teach several classes which are, I guess, directly relatable to this very panel. I teach a cool course called The Science of Fandom. I teach consumer behavior and sport marketing as well. And I also do some research consultation for a number of professional entities as well. Right now, I'm working alongside with the NFL, Fox Sports, previously done work with Brooklyn Nets, NYCFC, and very happy to be here.
Love it. So why don't I start with you, Brandon? What do you think the biggest challenge is in the business of sports? Thinking of the sort of science of fandom. Obviously, the past couple of years have been challenging when we couldn't do in person, and now that's coming back, and there's this sort of hybrid. But just when you're talking either to your clients or your students, where do you think the biggest challenge is?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think when the first thing that comes to mind when I'm talking about challenges, I think about the newest generation that's coming up, Gen Z, not millennials anymore, Gen Z, who actually have a great sense of purchasing power. They're a stronger consumer than we actually think. But I think one of the challenges that they are going to present, or already perhaps do present, to teams specifically, is this idea that there's possibly a shift in loyalty from team to player. I see it from my classes, from my students who I talk to, but I also see it in our research that we're doing. So there's been this shift in the mentality of we no longer are loyal to a specific team, rather we're loyal to athletes. So if our favorite athlete is LeBron, hey, if he's going to Cleveland to LA, it's not even going to be about our affinity towards Cleveland or LA, it's an affinity towards LeBron James. So I think teams are going to eventually start to have to wrap their heads around how they can better engage consumers, even amongst or amidst players changing from team to team.
That's really interesting. So, Lauren, you have a team that probably has up there as the most passionate fan base that I can think of. I'd love your sort of reaction to that, as well as then maybe what you see as one of the larger challenges from a fandom.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with what Brandon's saying. I think, ironically, baseball's maybe more insulated from that than other sports because of how regional we are, and also how poorly baseball has marketed its players, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting thought to kind of wrap your head around as we hopefully, become a little bit more adept at getting some of our players out there and, making their names as big as LeBron's. But I think with this question, I was kind of thinking of it in two parts. One was more kind of as the leader of my brand, and one was more related to my specific product that I'm selling. So on the brand side, I think the biggest challenge that we've had, despite the pandemic, over the last couple of years has just been, the emergence of the need of brands, and sports teams included in that, to really project their values, especially with Gen Z. They want to know that the teams and the brands they're supporting share their values, and doing that while also recognizing that sport is a place where people come to release themselves from the troubles of the world, and kind of figuring out when do we need to be the place that people can come for fun, and when do we need to use our platforms to drive really important conversations, knowing that people will listen because of their loyalty and fandom. So that's been something that we've wrestled with a lot, and still are wrestling with. Hopefully we're walking the line as well as we can. But then on the flip side, on the kind of more business side and product side, we have not cracked the nut yet on how we're going to monetize fans of the future. And it isn't going to be just through, media rights and ticket sales anymore. And certainly not with the way that Gen Z is engaging with sports teams. So, kind of figuring out how to recognize that there are passionate fans that we need to figure out how to monetize beyond just our season ticket holder base. And figuring out the ways to do that are going to be a big area of focus for us and our league.
I love it. So Rob, what about you? I mean, college sports, super passionate, regionalized. You guys kind of sit up above and around it. What are your thoughts on either anything that has been said or specifically around a big challenge that you see?
Yeah, I mean, lots of great insights from my fellow panelists here, and I couldn't agree more with the overall themes. As it relates to influencers and sort of the power of athletes versus the power of teams. even in the college space, that's now becoming more of a reality with the recent changes as it relates to NIL, name, image, and likeness. Really, the ability of student athletes to be able to monetize themselves in ways that were never possible before. But having said that, in college, it's not quite the same dynamic that you may be seeing in the NBA and some other leagues, because it is more transitory in terms of the actual athletes that are participating in college, where it's the universities that are the sort of focal point of that passion. But I think what NIL is demonstrating, and what looking at other leagues is indicative of on the whole, is the fact that it's not about just what's happening on the field of play. And it hasn't been that way for a long time, but now with all of the other ways that you can engage with your fandom and that passion, whether it's the traditions of a school, in the case of college sports, or the behind the scenes human aspects and elements that are when you're engaging with athletes, it's really that you have to approach things, frankly, more as a media company. It's not just about the product on the field; it's about the lifestyle, about the culture. It's you look at things like what you saw on Netflix with their F1 series, and now potentially something with golf. That's bringing in new fans, because it's making the stories matter. It's not just about the scores at the end of the game. It's about the stories that lead up to that and that happen after that, and all of those results. And so for us, it's really about tapping into that fandom. We've been very focused as a company and as an industry on a handful of Saturdays every year, or a couple days a week, in the spring. It's got to be 365 days, because fans are fans 365 days. So that's really the challenge that we're taking on, and that we're trying to lead the way for the partners that we work with, both on the school side and on the brand side.
So one of the things that I always think about when I see NIL, or even talking about the individual player versus team, to me there's like two levels of player, right? There's LeBron, who people are going to follow him and be really passionate about it. But what about the 6th, 7th, 8th person on the bench, right? And like the quarterback of Alabama, it was very widely said, got $1 million in sponsorship, right? But the offensive lineman, he got a barbecue deal at the local place in Birmingham. But my question is a little bit on scale, right? You've got the premier athlete, and then you've got everybody else, and then similarly, you guys, you have super fans, you have fanatics that love the team, that love the games on Saturday, and then there's this another layer of whether it's casual fans or new fans you need to attract to continue to grow. It just seems to me like scale is probably a challenge in this. I don't know if I'm framing the question quite right, but Brandon, do you know where I'm going?
Sure. So Rob also probably can tackle this to a greater degree, because I think it's obviously really relevant to college sports. But You're right, scale is a big deal, and I think it's going to be variable. Excuse me, it's going to be variable across region to region, right? So those linemen that you're talking about are going to be so relevant in Alabama, even though we haven't heard of who they are, right? So I think it's probably dependent upon each and every region and what they can afford to do within their particular region, if they're able to have any type of deal in the first place.
Yeah.
Am I on to something, Rob? Yeah.
Rob, what do you think of that? We may have lost Rob a little bit. All right, Lauren, I'm going to you then.
Yeah.
Flipping it to sort of the second part of my question.
Is there? Am I back?
You're back, Rob. Sorry. Can you hear me now, Rob? All right, Rob, I'm coming back to you in a second. Lauren, I want to go sort of the other part of my question, which is you've got people that are just sprinting to Wrigley, right? Like they go. I have somebody that used to work with me that saw you were talking today and sent me 40 texts on asking you about Rizzo, and are you gonna bring him back, and all these other questions. He gave us a tour. I took him to Wrigley, and he gave me a tour before we saw you, who gave us a real tour. But how do you reach out to new fans while still embracing the traditions and the core that is obsessed with what you all do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just balancing, our go-to-market strategy is really around, yes, super serving existing fans, but we've built in the last 4 years a lot of net new efforts to engage the next generation of fan. And a lot of it comes down to recognizing that their fandom as a fan of the Chicago Cubs is not as core to their identity as maybe it is for older generations. We're lucky in that baseball is a very generational sport, and oftentimes your fandom is handed down to you. Those family trips to Wrigley Field become like real markers of happiness in someone's life. So we benefit from that loyalty, not just because of the history of our team, but the nature of the ballpark where we play. But to engage that next generation of fan at scale, it really comes down to better connecting Cubs to culture, and just the way that we're trying to do that through, lifestyle, fashion, art, music, all of those things I think are a key factor in making sure that we're sort of showing up in the other places where they exist to drive that notion of the relevance of baseball and the Chicago Cubs, instead of expecting that, the outcome of every interaction with them is going to be a visit to Wrigley Field to see a game. We're lucky that we have a really strong season ticket holder base, but for us, it's really more now getting someone who's maybe coming to one of our 81 home games to come to like 3 or 4. That's where we're going to see the incremental growth, and, figuring out the ways that we can help that next generation of fan kind of gamify their fandom, if you will, to sort of reward and incentivize that repeated engagement, whether it's coming to the ballpark or, watching a game on a streaming device or buying a hat in a ballpark. There's so many different ways for them to express their fandom. And, we have to figure out how to encourage each and every one. It can't just be about the trip to Wrigley Field.
I love it. So, Rob, if we got you back,
Hopefully, am I back? Can you hear me?
We got you.
Good. Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what Lauren is saying. I mean, and really the core of that, and where we've spent a lot of time, is you just got the first step in engaging fans is understanding fans, and you need to, have the right, sort of data infrastructure in place. You need to understand who's buying tickets, who's consuming your content, who's buying your merch, to create more of a virtuous circle around all of that, and then be able to do things around loyalty. There are so many different ways to demonstrate your fandom, and people should be incentivized to do it. It should be gamified. I mean, again, just this idea of interactivity and participation is so prevalent in so many other areas of our life outside of sports. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the airline industry, from lots of industries, that bring people in and help foster this sense of culture, again, to try to unlock this fandom and tap into this fandom, year round.
I love it. All right, so let's look to the future. Rob, you and I have talked about this. We actually met at a venture pitch event years ago, so I know this is near and dear to your heart. But talk to us about like where new technologies, it can be startups or just in general, that you're excited about, where you all are placing bets. And if you want to talk a little bit about your esports league or anything else that you guys have already launched, that's cool as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to learn more about that hologram company or companies. That was pretty wild. I hadn't seen that before.
Man, I wish I could show. I've got a video, Rob, that like is so lights out, but I'm NDA'd up. I can't show it.
So very cool stuff. I mean, there's so much coming. I can't say that. I think college is really a fast follower space more than anything else. So it's taking the lessons learned that's happening in other places of sports and also other industries and trying to apply them in the context. So I'm not sure I'm going to say anything that is groundbreaking in terms of where we think there's opportunities, but it's things around. If not holograms, it's things around AR, it's things around being able to take the best of the at-home experience and translating it to the in-stadium experience, whether that's around, stats or viewing angles or things like that, and also vice versa. How do you take that passion and community that you feel when you're sitting in the stands with 100,000 other people, which thankfully we can do again this year, and bring some of that home? And so, it's technologies that enable sort of that, bring the best of both worlds, because there are amazing things, about both the in-stadium and the at-home experience. And it's the technologies that help, enable that. A lot of that is driven by mobile first, thinking, and then building on top of that. And so we're very lucky we have companies like Sidearm within our portfolio that are powering hundreds of apps across the college ecosystem and thousands of websites. So we have this great platform on top of which to experiment and bring things like AR into the mix, or bring things like NFTs into the mix, and really just experiment across all the different, we're lucky because we have thousands of universities that we work with. So those are thousands of labs with which to try new things out.
I love it. All right, Brandon, you're studying this. You're thinking about it every day. What areas are you most excited about in the future?
Yeah, so I'll say a boring answer and then a sexy answer, if that's okay, just to balance out. The boring may not be boring at all. It's something that Lauren and Rob already talked about. Identity isn't going anywhere, right? Like, we are more and more becoming almost kind of like a narcissistic culture, if you will. So people are looking to showcase their identities at any chance that they can get. And sport just allows us to do that more so than any other medium. So I think no matter how far we go into the future, at least the near-term future, identity is always going to be something that's relevant, and sports teams are always going to have to find a way where they can be a medium to represent identity. The sexy stuff, Fred, you're not far off. The hologram stuff is a real thing. I know you said you're NDA'd up. I'm kind of not exactly NDA'd up, but I've seen some things as well that I can't say as well. But people should know that that's on the horizon. That's cool stuff, man. The hologram stuff's very cool. You had said, you can put a game at Wrigley Field like on your desk. I always use that joke that I'm going to be walking around my classes saying, get that game off your desk. I'm trying to teach you, right? Yeah. But what's also interesting is that, if it can be scaled to your desk, I think it's so fascinating that, we could have the World Cup scaled to your local high school soccer stadium, right? And so people could drive to your local high school soccer stadium to see the World Cup literally scaled perfectly to your own high school stadium. Or you could have the World Series in your backyard if you had a big enough yard, right? I think that's what's really fascinating. So hologram's not too far off. I know we haven't touched much on VR because I know there's some possible negative feedback to VR. But I know the NBA loves to tout their stat that they say, listen, 99% of our fans have never attended a basketball game. That's crazy, right? And I know it has a lot to do with probably fans in China. Yeah, it probably has a lot to do with fans in China because there's a vast population in China. But how they would define a fan, 99% of fans have yet to visit a stadium or go to a game. So you have to start thinking about stuff like hologram or VR. So that's where I would say with that.
That's nuts. I will say, when you said the narcissistic comment, my team is going to start laughing in the background. But there was an app where essentially you could take any video, like a GIF, and instantly replace the real person's face with your own. It was sort of this facial identity morphing thing. And I spent like a week sending them GIFs of me like dunking, like basically replacing myself on LeBron or replacing myself on Jordan, hitting a home run. And finally it was like, hey, Fred, we get it. Like, if you can put your head on famous athletes, like, please stop. I don't know if the app's still around. I'll have to look, but I love it. And I think on the VR side, like, anyone that has an Oculus could watch some of the Olympics in VR this year. And it was, to me, the first time live sports has been like impressive. Like, it's hard to get VR right live. And I think it's getting there, right? So Lauren, what do you think? What are you excited about?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just a build on what Rob and Brandon were saying. I think, to the point that not everyone can make the pilgrimage to your ballpark. There are such cool things happening, with the ability to kind of map your facility and either interject it in, other gaming platforms where, people are engaging, whether it's Fortnite, or almost allow someone to come into the space and experience it virtually. There's nothing like the real thing, but having that accessibility, I think, is really interesting because we've done focus groups. We have fans, thanks to WGN, all over the world. And we have people who claim that their number one marker of identifying as a Cubs fan is their love for Wrigley Field. But to Brandon's point, they've never been to Wrigley Field. So being able to deliver that virtually in an immersive way is really exciting for us. And we're playing a lot in like AR and spatial audio as well, to just try to figure out, are there things that we can do within the, ballpark experience to make it even better, because at a certain point in time, the better that the broadcast gets, the less motivating it is for people to come to your venue. And that is our primary source of revenue. So, it is like not just being able to deliver Wrigley Field or Cubs fandom in a virtual sense, but how are we using technology to heighten the experience when you do come to the venue so that it is better than what you can get when you're just watching it at home.
I love it. All right, we're gonna blast through 1 to 2 questions here from the audience. So rapid fire reaction. NFTs, short-term trend or here to stay? Lauren.
I think it's here to stay. I just think we'll have to figure out like quality versus quantity. And right now it's, quantity over quality. So we're sort of treading lightly as we kind of figure out how to maybe be a bit of a fast follower in that space.
Brandon, what do you think?
Oh man, I am ill-equipped to answer this question. I would say maybe. I don't even have a direct answer on that. Right now they're great. I think they're moving really fast and they haven't planted their feet into something that's definable. So I'm not too sure how that can go. So I don't want to say they're definitely here to stay. They're here to stay in the near-term future. I don't know far out.
Rob, what about you?
Definitely think they're here to stay. Our lives, more and more of that is happening on the web or in digital environments, more broadly. And this is the luxury good of the future, right? So I don't think we've seen the killer app. We haven't found the Birkin bag of NFTs just yet, but it's coming. Definitely here to stay in one shape or form.
I love Birkin bag of NFTs. That might be the subject line of this as a podcast. All right, so I'll get you guys out of here on this. How's the pandemic affected the way you think about the business and the future of the fan experience? Just a brief, I know you could talk for an hour about that, but let's go reverse. Rob, why don't you go first?
It's really just pulled things forward. Hasn't changed our strategy at all. It's just accelerated it. So, crawl, walk, run turned into run, skip, jump. Things like, you touched on esports before. Things that were sort of nascent, dip your toe in the water ideas turn into like, let's launch the largest esports league in college with Level Next. Things have just accelerated, tremendously, but we haven't gone from going left to going right. It's just go right and go really fast.
Lauren, what about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If anything, the positive of it is with the acceleration of the adoption of some digital technologies, especially maybe with our older demographic, things we already wanted to do to create a frictionless experience that fans likely would have, kind of opposed. They just understand now we have to do it for health and safety reasons. And it's really allowed us to accelerate some of the engagement that we're trying to do in the digital space, not just with the younger demographic, but now that work is so much more relevant for the broader fan base.
Brandon, what do you think?
I'll take it a different angle. I will say that I'm never a fan of marketing a team on the product, the core product, as in my team's going to win, my team's great, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen. So I think COVID and the pandemic really was almost kind of like baptism by fire, as in when your sport product is not on, how strong is your brand to resonate with the lifestyle of consumers? So I think that drove a lot of teams and brands forward in terms of what can we do to make sure our brand is connecting with consumers rather than our product on the field.
I love it. Well, thank you all. This has been so awesome. I love that I get to just sit and talk to you guys and call it work for the day. So thank you. And we're going to jump to the other panel now, but this was awesome. So thank you. All right, we've heard lots of exciting ideas on the future. Now we're going to go specifically into teams and thinking about the future of fandom from a team standpoint. I know Lauren kicked us off on the Cubs side, but Megan and Kate, welcome. So excited to have you all here chatting with us.
Thank you for having us. Thanks.
All right, so Megan, let's start with you. Can you give just a blurb on what you do and who you do it for?
Sure. So Megan Cantwell, Vice President of Marketing with the Chicago Fire Football Club. I've only been here a couple months, but joined at a really exciting time. And this is incredibly timely. We launched a new logo, which I'll touch on the process here in a little bit. But I oversee marketing and partnership marketing.
Awesome. Kate.
Hi, everybody. Kate Denton. I am with the Indiana Pacers, Indiana Fever, Fort Wayne Mad Ants, and all of Pacer Sports and Entertainment. I have been with the team, this will be my third season, but it's haven't had a normal season yet, so it still feels completely brand new. I lead all of our brand marketing and our digital and social across all the teams.
I love it. Well, I'd love to kind of start with something that came out of the previous panel, which is this idea of how do you appeal to your fanatics, your super fans, while still attracting the next generation of fans, or maybe the casual fan. That's obviously a challenging balance, but curious your take. And Kate, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think the pandemic has accelerated our need to have this discussion, because I think in the past, a lot of our systems were set up to only super serve the fanatics and the folks that were coming into the venue. COVID and its impact on various age groups brought in a much younger fan into the our field house last year. And with that, we needed to rethink what that fan experience was going to be. Additionally, it kept a lot of people away. So we had to look really at our social channels and decide look at who the audience was and what was the type of content that would allow them to maintain their engagement with our brand, or deepen our engagement with their brand. So for our super fans, a lot of them, if we look at them from a monetary perspective, those are a lot of the folks that are coming into the field house. We are lucky in that we also have a $360 million renovation being revealed at the same time. So for those fans, not only are they excited to get back to basketball and the live experience, but we have an incredible new venue to show them when they come in. So that is in our favor in some ways. And as it relates to engaging the fans on our social channels, we're really looking to see how do we harvest the fan of the future, and how do we think differently about the content that we're providing, when we're providing it, where we're providing it, and what do we need to do moving forward. And with that comes a lot of access things that are different. The types of behind the scenes content that our fans are looking for dovetails really nicely with the fan of the future, and that fans aren't following teams in the same way that they were in the past. They're following players. So we need to have a much tighter linkage between the marketing group, as well as basketball ops, as well as all the agents and managers of our players, to ensure that we are developing them as entities as well as the team, which is a big shift from where we've been in the past.
Super interesting. So Megan, what do you think on your end, and then maybe talk about the rebrand, if that played a role too, because obviously you have super fans, and you're always trying to bring in new people, right, to the experience. So curious your take, how you balance that.
Yeah, so a lot of thoughts, and kind of building on what Kate said. I think we're at a unique time right now in that we just launched a new logo. Our club is celebrating 25 seasons next year, and so we're a young team in a relatively young league. And by that, I mean, we still have to sort of really build that fan base. And so we're in the midst of building the fan base, but also staying connected to kind of our roots and history. And so when we launched the new logo, we sort of leaned into the sports identity as cultural connection as a platform. And we took a very unique but transparent process, and we invited fans to participate in the design of the new logo. And so, across several countries and cities and thousands of fans, we sort of took their input on what do you want to connect with, and what's important to you, and how do you want to see yourself in our new look. And through that process, came out with a new mark last week, and really excited to share it with the city.
That's so cool. So let me ask you this. How does Fandom evolve with all the new technology? I showed a couple of things. You all are doing all sorts of interesting work at sort of the cutting edge, but are there certain technologies that you all are piloting or keeping an eye on, or that you find interesting? And
yeah,
Kate,
sorry, go ahead.
No, Megan, you got it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're always trying new things. I think, to what the panel spoke on before and what Kate touched on, it's not so much sort of the in-stadium experience, that can stand alone. It's got to be an extension into the digital ecosystem. And, with that comes a myriad of technology and different experiences that you can now provide fans. So we're constantly testing and trying new things, both in stadium, but also outside the stadium, just to continue to build that relationship. So nothing specific, just that we've got our, finger on the pulse with that one.
Yeah, for us, I think we continue to look at NFTs and more broadly just the cyber world and how do we create experiences that are relevant to our fans. So a lot of discussions right now in the metaverse and how do we play in that? Should we play in it? And what are the opportunities and experiences that we can provide that create stickiness for the fan base? Because the reality, like every other team in the world, a lot of our fans will never attend a game. They're not in our local market. And so are there benefits that we can provide them for at a fair price that increase their stickiness with our team, but also provide them something unique? And some of those things may be things that we only provided to season ticket holders or our highest value clients in the past. Is there a way to democratize that across a broader base so you can still realize a revenue opportunity while increasing the fandom without overtaxing your core assets, meaning your coaches, your teams, your players, et cetera?
A couple of interesting things. So Dapper Labs obviously became sort of one of the poster children of NFTs. And I remember we looked at it a couple of years ago when it was first emerging and pitched it to a very big client who kind of was like, I don't get it. And now they're actually working with them. So that was fun to see. But it always is an example I use when I'm talking to people, because sometimes you don't know what's going to resonate and what's going to break through. And so one of the things I want to, Kate, you mentioned NFTs, cyber world, metaverse. How do you not tax your players and coaches and talent when you're asking them to get involved in these types of things to extend your reach? When you're not quite sure if it's going to work yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to unpack there, Fred, to be honest with you, because for a lot of these athletes, it's like that's an opportunity for them that's separate of the CBA for them to monetize themselves, right? So I think there's a delicate balance that we all have there as we navigate this space. I think we need to look at how are we currently using our appearances with our players, and is there a more effective way for us to do so, especially in a post-COVID environment? I mean, at the end of the day, while fandom continues to evolve, one thing that has remained the same is that our fans want to get as close to their favorite players, right? And that one-on-one experience is game-changing. So, and it's something that fans look forward to. I see it in my own child. He thought he was friends with Malcolm Brogdon, and if you ask him, he will tell you he and Malcolm are friends because Malcolm waved to him at a game. And he at the time he had never met him, but he talked about him. He talked about his stats. He talked about what he was doing in his social life. This is a 6-year-old talking about an NBA player to other people, right? And so I think that one of the things that we'll need to do is help create opportunities where we are elevating the stardom of our players while still delivering value for the fan, delivering value for the team, because all of these things are very taxing on your teams internally to create those experiences. And there's no easy answer, because as all of us that are part of leagues, the leagues have carved out different rights. Like an NFT would make a lot of sense if I could do it for Malcolm Brogdon, but Malcolm Brogdon's rights are somewhere else right now. Right. So that's a place where we're going to navigate. And as Lauren said on the earlier panel, it's a matter of quantity versus quality on all these experiences. So what we've seen from analyzing offerings across leagues and teams is that the revenue opportunity might not be there. However, the bigger brand building opportunity or just being at the forefront of testing and learning within our own organizations has incredible value as well.
It's super interesting. I love the 6-year-old waving and becoming a fan for life. I'm kind of laughing because I'm actually doing this call from my mom's apartment because we had a flood in ours, and over her desk where she works, my mom's in her 70s, is a picture of Mickey Mantle. And she has that picture because she wrote a letter to Mickey Mantle when she was 6, and he wrote back. Right? So we've got a letter from Mickey Mantle. That has led to me, my sister, like our whole family watches the Yankees because that letter was returned, that one-to-one connection. But Megan, I'm curious from your standpoint, how do you foster that, the super fandom that happens from that one-to-one connection while promoting the team, right? That's a balance. And does technology provide any opportunities there?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely balanced, right? I mean, the team is sort of the reason we're all here, right? If you think about it at the end of the day, but it's a brand and an experience that we're providing. And so it's striking a balance. I mean, a little bit of what Kate was saying, sort of building the personalities and the human side to our players and creating experiences and opportunities for people to really connect with them is super important in that space. And it's tough, right? Because soccer fans, especially Chicago soccer fans, loyal fans, very passionate, and we want everybody to sort of embrace all that the players come with, but it's a delicate balance.
So I'm gonna jump to a question from the audience, just because I think it's super interesting. How are you embracing startups, sports startups, innovation? How do startups work with you? And maybe Megan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, because we are a younger team in a younger league, I think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of how we're focused on the business side. We've got an incredible owner in Joe Mansueto, who himself is, very active in the business community. And so you think about just sort of his connection to Chicago, and certainly Chicago is a really big startup city. There's a lot of opportunity that comes our way. We don't have a specific strategy, I'd say, but as we think about leveraging technology to provide data and insights on our fans and future fans, working with startups and other technology partners is an area of focus with our business intelligence team.
And Kate, what about you in terms of working with either new technologies or startups, and maybe an example of something in the new facility that sort of has some wow to it? Just curious how you guys approach the startup innovation world.
Yeah, we're lucky in that Techstars Sports is located here in Indianapolis, and the Simon family is invested in that. So I actually sit as the Simon family representative and Pacer Sports and Entertainment representative on Techstars. So there's a number of ways that we're interacting with sports startups and innovation much more broadly than just basketball. So we're involved from an investment perspective. We're involved from a mentorship perspective. We're involved from making connections throughout the city to other partners that may be better suited for it. And then we also look at it from a testing and learning opportunities for how we can get closer to the fan or provide an improved fan experience when they're in venue. There's some things I can't talk about, things I can't talk about, but some of the ways that we're working with them are everything from nutrition plans and training modules for our players to things that we'll do with our junior hoops tour and technologies that we're invested in that help us from a community engagement perspective that you'll see coming out in the next couple of years here in partnership with us that we're really excited about. And then we're just looking at just frictionless spending opportunities, right? And frictionless fan experiences. So everything that you've seen this at other venues before, but I think we'll continue to see it more is like the scanless pop-up retail and food and bev within the venue is something that we'll be launching this year. And the whole point is just making the fan experience as more seamless and frictionless as possible. Let them get away from the game to go to the bathroom or buy their soda, their beer, their popcorn, and then get back as quickly as they can to the action of the game. Because at the end of the day, the live experience is about what happens in the bowl, and we want to make sure that we're getting fans back there as quickly as possible. On the flip side, we're also thinking about things that this is not like a new technology, but just really thinking about how fan behavior is changing. And when you think of share of opportunity, in the past, we may have considered someone comes to 5 to 10 Pacers games, right? So the conversation would have been, how do you get them to one more? And where's our share of wallet coming from, our share of their experiences? How do we flip it from I'm going to the Pacers game and I'll have a beer there with my buddies to I'm going to go have beers with my buddies at the Pacers game? So what do we have to recreate and change about our entire in-venue experience to enable that to happen? It's pretty drastic. But we're well along that path, and within the next 2 years, you're going to see a very different experience for fans when they come to our new Gamebridge Fieldhouse.
Yeah, one of the things that we recently, sort of this year, actually, we moved back to the city to Soldier Field, and so we had played in suburban Bridgeview for a handful of years. Great experience there, but under new ownership, the focus on fandom and sort of making it accessible for everybody via public transportation or just being sort of in city proper really allowed us to reimagine the fan experience, especially at a kind of venue like Soldier Field.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the MLS team in New York plays at Yankee Stadium, right? There's something to that you can just get to it. You hop on the subway and you're there. Here's an interesting question from the crowd. Now that fans are going back in stadium, plans to offer any in-stadium experience products outside of food and merchandise. So thinking beyond the food and merchandise side, what in-stadium experiences are you all thinking about or excited about? And Megan, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways I'd answer this. I mean, we are definitely leaning into the surprise and delight element of fan experience. And so, whether it's, so many jerseys are given away in a game and lucky seat number XYZ, gets called out and gets assigned kit, things like that where it's more tangible. Also experiences, right? So upgrading seats or getting you sort of special access post match to meet a player. But very much in the surprise and delight space and not so much promoting it. And then the other thing I would say is how we activate with our corporate partners, right? We partner with a variety of different brands and product types. And so bringing their brand and experience to life in the stadium that isn't necessarily food and beverage or merchandise or tied to the sport itself, but activating with them and allowing another experience for fans and bringing different brands into the stadium.
Yeah, I'd echo that. We are very restricted in terms of what interactions fans and players can have during this post-COVID world, and hoping that we get back to a more normal environment in the future, because I know the athletes want it and the fans both want it. In the meantime, I think there's a question of how do we connect more to culture and allow fans into some of the experiences that we had in the past. So we're in the midst of launching a new City Edition uniform, and we'll be featuring a number of different vignettes over the past 30 years of the team that will be featured in our commercials. Well, we're going to bring those vignettes to life in venue and create a high quality image capture environment where fans can then peacock, I guess is how I'd say it, really flex the Pacers as part of their personal brand identity by putting them in environments that they never would have had access to be in before, even if it's just in the commercial environment. That shows their fandom, that shows generations of fandom. I'm envisioning, we launched a 1970s video today. We'll have that brought to life in venue. And I imagine generations of fans getting their picture taken in it together and sharing that out on their socials. And while it's not a interaction with the player, it is interacting with iconic elements from our past, iconic highlights from our past, and being able to do it with a family.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Kate, right? COVID has just sort of pushed us all to think differently. I mean, to your point, there's rules and restrictions in terms of player-fan sort of involvement, but it really pushed us to think about providing different experiences, both in stadium and out of stadium. And so for us, this year rolling out a tailgate sort of hosted by the Fire, but it came with, music and art and entertainment, and it was, free space outside the stadium, but a place for people to have a different experience and sort of start the match a little bit early and really roll into the stadium a little bit more energized and connected.
I think it's interesting, and I'll play off of something Kate said around peacocking, right? Like showing off what you have. We have a podcast, the Venture Fuel podcast, and probably the most surprised I've ever been over 100 plus episodes. I was talking with somebody named Kathy Hackle, who's sort of the forefront of the metaverse. He was talking about the fact that now her kids buy Air Jordans or want to buy Air Jordans for their avatar, not for themselves. And like, it totally blew my mind. Like I was obsessed with Air Jordans. I never could get them. It was like a pipe-long dream, to the point where at my 21st birthday, I was given them as a gift by my mom after I was done playing basketball. It was the first time I ever had them. And she was like, oh, that's over. Like now people want that on their virtual avatar or whatnot. And I think Dr. Brandon was saying before, the narcissist part of it, but it's really us showing our fandom in new ways, whether that is in person, on our actual body, or on our digital version, is a pretty interesting way to think about it. I also have to tell you, Kate, I had a blue corduroy Pacers hat all through college, and I used to play. Now I'm totally forgetting his name. Serge Zwicker? No, hold on. I'll come back. I've got a funny story for you, but maybe I'll tell you offline. How do you bridge this gap, right, of physical players on the court, you're broadcasting TV rights, whatnot. There is this metaverse opportunity that maybe is a little undefined, but how do you enable your players and your teams to start to spread outside of say regional into the metaverse. Do you guys have any thoughts on how that might look for you moving forward?
I'd say it's something that we're still navigating, and it's certainly sort of a complex space, right? To think about extending player personality and connection outside of, in person and in stadium. So it's something we're navigating. I don't know if we've necessarily kind of cracked it, but I think a lot of teams and leagues are in the same spot and really kind of figuring out that space. The other thing I would just touch on, and not maybe specific to this, but just esports, right, is another area of focus. And how do you connect also your players in that arena and get them into the esports space as well is something we're focused on.
I think esports actually, and just the gaming environment actually helps us quite a bit with creating stickiness amongst fans. I mean, I talked about my 6-year-old earlier, but last night, Jeremy Lamb hit our game-winning shot with 3.5 seconds left to go in the game. And while the crowd went crazy, my 6-year-old was like, hold on. There's enough time left for one more play, right? And he's 6. And he understands that. And he understands the stats on all the players that were on the court. He understands who should be out on the court, who should be swabbed in from both our team and the Grizzlies. And I just think that we have to recognize that how much that's enabling knowledge at a much deeper level, right? They don't have to do the research that we had to do growing up to understand how your favorite player fared against the competition. These tools have enabled us to be able, for a infant, really a toddler, to be able to engage and understand the sport in a totally different way. And I think that's ultimately what's going to change what's demanded from fans as we head into the metaverse. And I also think, I mean, just to be frank, like, there's also a big economic opportunity that we really don't understand what the trade-offs are, right? So for a lot of us, we've been focused a lot on feet and seats and getting fans in and providing the best fan experience. Now we're talking about a significant shift in dollars to go create, then curate the metaverse. And that's a huge shift from our traditional business model. That's going to create a lot of opportunity for growth and for long-term fandom. However, in the short term, you've got to be able to justify it. So when I think about what the fan of the future role is today, I'm really going all the way back to what are the tools available today to a 6-year-old, and then what's the journey for the next 25 years to get them to become a more frequent season ticket or more frequent attendee to our venue. That involves coordination across our social, digital, our gaming partners, our betting partners, our broadcast partner, our internal teams, right? The trade-off that we'll need to make to showcase what we think this is going to be. And then we have to hold hands into this future together. It's so different than where we've been pre-COVID. But I think if one good thing came out of COVID for me, it's the acceleration of all that innovation that has to happen, and how it will reframe everything that we do.
That's great. And Megan, you said something that actually helped me remember the entire Pacers hat story. Was I actually had a blue corduroy Pacers hat because we were playing a game called NBA Live at the time in college. And I always played with Rick Smits, who for whatever reason, like, just scored a gazillion points in that game. I don't know. I mean, he was a great player too, obviously. But I tortured one of my roommates. I would play with Rick Smits every time and score 85 points a game on him. And I had a Pacers hat to remind him of it. So I knew more about the Pacers because of that game than from actually watching, even though I was a big NBA fan. So I think it's interesting, and certainly FIFA and whatnot plays a similar role. Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
It's crazy. It creates all these additional revenue opportunities, whether it be from some of the collectible items that are far outside of what we would think of as our traditional scope. And luckily, our leagues help with those licensing agreements, which allow us to get bobbleheads and other pieces of merch out there that our fans can engage, whether they be, and it helps us, right? So here in Indiana, we may see merch from other teams, and with the rev share model, that's good. And I'm glad that you can get Pacer stuff out in Portland and Pacer stuff in LA, and leverage the fact that we have a global audience, but a hyper local brand, and the leagues enable us to be able to monetize that globally.
That's awesome. Well, Megan, Kate, this was so much fun. Thank you all for making the time to share with us, and for everybody that tuned in today. Thank you. We love the opportunity to share all these brilliant folks with you. And if we can ever be of help, just shoot us a note. And until next time, take care.